How's the Trump impeachment trial playing at home? Frank Luntz asked his focus group.
I think there are extremists on both sides of the fence. And, you know, we could also show pictures of Portland burning.
What we have to look at is the constant hundreds of times lying about election fraud and that he actually won. That's what incites the violence.
The Democrats in this video did not show the whole picture of the speech.
Yes.
I read that. The speech itself, he did not once condone that.
And joining us now is pollster Frank Luntz. And Frank, how badly is America divided right now? And could that change with Donald Trump's acquittal by getting both sides to move on?
Well, that's the key. In a word, the American people are saying enough. On the Democratic side, they're saying enough of Donald Trump. I don't want to hear him. I don't want to see him. I just want him to go away. On the Republican side, they're saying enough of this witch hunt, which is what our focus group respondents call it. On both steps, they want to see what's coming over the next few weeks and next few months. And the most critical point is, I don't see a way to bring people together. I'm a pollster. I'm a communications guy. I don't know the language that unites people because, quite frankly, Howie, in every one of these focus groups I've done, every one of them, the moment I mention Donald Trump's name, the whole thing blows up. And that has not changed. In fact, it's worse today than it was even on Election Day. So there's no one out there. It is insane, and it's got to stop.
So how important in terms of shaping public opinion was all the video played at the trial of the carnage and the destruction at the Capitol as compared to, say, the media coverage and commentary?
There is a lesson in this, and the lesson is the commentary doesn't matter if the video betrays that. And the video was so strong against Donald Trump, much stronger in the video that the Democratic House managers played than the Republicans in response. That 13 minutes of what happened in Washington, people looked at it, and I talked to congressmen and senators who will never say this publicly, but they looked at it and they said, oh my God, it was even worse than I thought. He was even more violent, more extreme. And the anger towards the president among people who are undecided moved them in the direction of wanting a conviction. And that's why a majority of Americans, maybe not a majority of viewers, but a majority of Americans wanted conviction. What gave them the proof was the video, seeing it happening virtually live in our homes.
It was chilling video, but of course it doesn't prove that Donald Trump incited the violence, although the violence was awful, especially to see it, the full panoply of it. But at the same time, does it seem to you that the media very much wanted conviction and doesn't particularly care that the president was acquitted for the second time?
The media was angry that the president was not convicted. And I watched in how they behaved with the language of Mitch McConnell, who both voted for acquittal and still suggested that Donald Trump is responsible legally, ethically, and in every other way. And that, I think, is going to be the challenge for the GOP. The single biggest impact I'm looking at is what does this mean for moving forward? What does it mean for the Republican Party in 2022 and 2024? Quite frankly, the party is so harshly divided right now that I think the prospects over the coming weeks and months are not good.
Well, since you brought that up, much of the media are also castigating the 43 Republican senators who voted to acquit former President Trump. So does that negative barrage tarnish the party, and will it remain a Trump party?
I'm not sure if it, oh God. You know, I've always tried to tell the truth on your show. I've tried to be candid, and I don't know whether the party moves on from Donald Trump. He still has a hold on a significant number of them, and a significant number have had enough of him. And frankly, the person who's in the most challenge right now is Kevin McCarthy, my friend, the House leader, because he cannot win a majority if the party is split. He has to find some way to get Trump voters to vote Republican, and those who used to vote Republican, suburban voters, women, upper middle class, he has to bring them back. And it's very difficult. But this is a media show. And I think that what viewers should be most upset over is that the glee in punishing Donald Trump, you can hear it in their commentary, you can hear it in their interviews with the witnesses, and it is wrong. that we should be honest brokers. We should ask tough but fair questions, and we should then give people the chance to give a full answer. And that's not what's happening on these shows. I did 2 interviews late last night. In neither show was the interviewer interested in presenting exactly what happened. They kept on beating up on Republicans, and they called it a technicality. They voted for Donald Trump. They voted for acquittal and a technicality. Howie, the Constitution is not a technicality. The Constitution is the law. And if members voted because of the Constitution, then that's exactly how they should have voted. We should give them kudos. We should applaud them for doing this. And the idea that the Constitution is a technicality is insane to me.
Well, the media showing their emotion on this, I think, does help to undermine any idea of being a fair arbiter. Frank Luntz, great to see you. Thanks for joining us.